The mahogany conference table in Peterson, Walsh and Associates' downtown office reflected the afternoon sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, but Veronica's face had gone ashen as she stared at the documents spread before her. My father's attorney, Harold Peterson, adjusted his reading glasses and cleared his throat with the gravity befitting a man who had just delivered life-altering news. "Mrs. Kingston," he said formally, addressing my stepmother with the professional courtesy that barely concealed his disapproval. "As I've explained, the will is quite clear. The entire estate, the house, the business holdings, the investment accounts and all personal property, transfers to the Olivia Kingston Irrevocable Trust, established by your late husband 7 years ago." Veronica's perfectly manicured fingers trembled as she turned the pages, her Botoxed forehead incapable of showing the full extent of her shock. "This can't be legal. I'm his wife. I have rights. We've been married for 3 years. "You do have rights," Harold confirmed, "which are outlined in the prenuptial agreement you signed before your marriage. You're entitled to the contents of your personal bank account, your jewelry, your vehicle, and a lump sum payment of $50,000 as specified in the prenup." $50,000? Veronica's voice climbed toward hysteria. "That's nothing. This house is worth $4 million. The business is worth millions more. I'm his widow." I sat quietly in the leather chair across from her, watching this woman who had spent 3 years trying to erase my presence from my father's life finally confront the reality of her situation. Yesterday she had stood in our kitchen, my childhood kitchen where I'd eaten thousands of meals, and declared that I was no longer welcome in what she assumed was now her house. What Veronica didn't know, what she had never bothered to learn during her brief marriage to my father, was that I wasn't just David Kingston's daughter. I was David Kingston's business partner, co-owner of Kingston Enterprises, and the primary beneficiary of an estate worth considerably more than the millions she had calculated. "Harold," I said quietly, "perhaps you should explain the full scope of the trust to Mrs. Kingston." Harold nodded, opening a thicker folder that contained documents Veronica had never seen. "The Olivia Kingston Irrevocable Trust currently holds assets valued at approximately $93 million. This includes the family residence, Kingston Enterprises and its subsidiaries, the commercial real estate portfolio, the stock and bond investments, and the art collection." $93 million? Veronica's voice came out as a croak. "The trust was established when Olivia was 21, Harold continued, and has been funded progressively over the past 7 years as David transferred ownership of various assets. Upon his death, the remaining assets automatically transferred to complete the trust funding." What Harold didn't mention, what wasn't reflected in these documents, was that I had been instrumental in building much of that wealth. While Veronica assumed I was just David Kingston's daughter living off family money, I had actually been his business partner for the past 5 years, responsible for the technology investments that had tripled our company's value. My phone buzzed with a text from my business manager. "Olivia, the Samsung deal closed this morning. Your share of the proceeds is $47 million. Congratulations on another successful exit." I glanced at the message, then turned my phone face down on the table. The Samsung acquisition of our AI startup was just one of several technology ventures I had developed independently of my father's traditional manufacturing business. "I don't understand," Veronica said, her voice taking on the wheedling tone she used when she wanted something. "David never mentioned any trust. He said everything would be taken care of, that I wouldn't need to worry about money." "He wasn't lying," I replied calmly. "You won't need to worry about money. You'll receive your $50,000 and be free to pursue whatever life you choose. You just won't be doing it in my house or with my family's assets." The possessive pronouns hit their mark. Veronica's face flushed red as she began to understand that the wealthy lifestyle she had married into was not, in fact, transferring to her ownership. "Your house," she sputtered. "I lived there for 3 years. I redecorated, I entertained clients, You lived there as my father's guest," I corrected. "The house has been in trust for 5 years, since before you married Dad. You were never an owner, just a resident." Harold consulted his notes. "The trust documents show that David transferred the property in 2019, 2 years before his marriage to Veronica. At that time, Olivia became the legal owner, with David retaining lifetime residence rights." This was true, though the full story was more complex. My father had established the trust not just for estate planning purposes, but because he had been concerned about Veronica's motivations from the beginning of their relationship. He loved her, or thought he did, but he wasn't blind to the fact that she had shown little interest in him before learning about his wealth. "But I signed papers," Veronica protested. "Mortgage documents, insurance forms." "You signed papers as David's spouse, giving you authority to act on his behalf in certain matters," Harold explained. "That authority terminated upon his death. You were never an owner of the property." My phone rang with a call from Forbes magazine. I had been expecting this call. They were finalizing their annual 30 under 30 list, and my recent technology exits had apparently caught their attention. "Ms. Kingston," the reporter's voice was professionally excited. "Congratulations on the Samsung acquisition. We're featuring you in our technology category this year. Can you confirm that this is your third successful startup exit in the past 2 years?" "Fourth actually," I replied, putting the call on speaker so Harold and Veronica could hear. "The Microsoft acquisition of our cloud platform closed last month. But yes, I'm happy to be included in your list." 4 exits totaling how much in personal proceeds? "Approximately $180 million over 2 years, I confirmed. Though those figures don't include the ongoing equity stakes in companies that haven't exited yet." Veronica made a choking sound. Harold raised his eyebrows. Even he hadn't known the full extent of my independent business success. "We'd love to feature your story," the reporter continued. "The daughter of a traditional manufacturing CEO who built her own technology empire while working within the family business. It's exactly the kind of intergenerational entrepreneurship our readers find inspiring." After ending the call, I looked across the table at Veronica, who appeared to be having difficulty breathing. "180 million, she whispered. "That's separate from the family trust," I clarified. "Those are proceeds from technology companies I founded and sold over the past 2 years. The trust assets are family wealth that my father and I built together over many years." The distinction was important because it highlighted how thoroughly Veronica had misunderstood the family dynamics. She had assumed I was a dependent daughter living off inherited wealth, when in reality I was an entrepreneur who had been building my own fortune while also contributing to the family business. "Olivia," Harold said, "perhaps you should explain about Kingston Enterprises." I nodded. "Veronica, you know that Dad founded Kingston Enterprises 30 years ago as a manufacturing company. What you don't know is that I've been running the technology division for the past 5 years, and that division now represents about 60% of the company's value." 60%? "We started with traditional manufacturing, automotive parts, industrial equipment, that sort of thing. But I convinced Dad to diversify into technology manufacturing and software development. The tech division I built is now worth approximately $57 million. What I didn't mention was that my father had initially been skeptical of my technology ideas, dismissing them as young people's fantasies, until the first contracts started generating serious revenue. It had taken 2 years of proving myself before he acknowledged that I understood market trends better than he did." My phone buzzed again, this time with a call from my patent attorney. "Olivia, great news. Google wants to license your AI optimization patents. They're offering $8 million upfront plus royalties. Should I proceed with negotiations?" "Yes, but push for $10 million upfront," I replied. "And make sure the royalty structure includes performance bonuses if their implementation exceeds baseline efficiency metrics." After ending the call, I realized that both Harold and Veronica were staring at me with expressions of amazement. "AI patents?" Harold asked. "I hold 17 patents in artificial intelligence and machine learning optimization," I explained. "Most were developed while building the technology startups, but they have broader applications across multiple industries." Veronica stood up abruptly, pacing to the window and back like a caged animal. "This is insane. David never told me any of this. He never mentioned your businesses or patents or any of it. What did you and Dad talk about during your marriage?" I asked, genuinely curious. "We talked about normal things. Social events, travel plans, home improvements." "Did you ever ask him about his work? About the business? About his long-term plans?" Veronica's silence was answer enough. During their 3-year marriage, she had apparently never shown interest in the details of my father's professional life or the source of the wealth that funded their lifestyle. "Did you know that Dad was considering retirement?" I continued. That he had been gradually transferring operational control of the company to me over the past 2 years. Retirement? He never said anything about retirement. He didn't mention it because he wasn't sure you would be supportive of the lifestyle changes that would come with stepping back from active business management. This was delicate territory. My father had confided in me that he worried Veronica was more interested in the status and wealth associated with being married to a successful CEO than in building a genuine partnership with him as a person. Harold cleared his throat diplomatically. Perhaps we should review the practical implications of the will and trust documents. Yes, I agreed. Veronica, you have 30 days to vacate the house. I'll arrange for a moving service to help with your personal belongings. The $50,000 will be transferred to your account within a week. 30 days, she protested. Where am I supposed to go? Wherever you choose. You're a free woman with $50,000 and no debts. That's more financial security than most people have. But I'm accustomed to a certain lifestyle. A lifestyle that was never actually yours, I reminded her gently. You were living as my father's wife in my house, supported by wealth that my father and I earned through decades of work. My phone rang again, this time with a call from the Wall Street Journal. I declined it. I had given enough interviews for one day, but showed the caller ID to Veronica. The business press has been following my work for the past year, I explained. After the Microsoft acquisition, they started paying attention to the pattern of successful exits. I don't understand, Veronica said, collapsing back into her chair. If you're so successful, why do you still live in your father's house? Why don't you have your own place? It was a fair question that revealed her fundamental misunderstanding of family dynamics. It's not my father's house, Veronica. It's been my house for 5 years. Dad continued living there because it was his home and I enjoyed his company. We were business partners and family members who genuinely liked spending time together. But now that he's gone, it's still my house. The only difference is that you no longer have permission to live there. Harold began organizing the documents into neat stacks. Olivia, there are a few additional matters we should discuss regarding the business operations and investment accounts. Of course, Veronica, you're welcome to stay for this discussion, but it won't affect your situation. She shook her head, standing to leave. I need to think about all of this. After Veronica left, Harold and I spent another hour reviewing the details of the estate transfer and the operational implications for Kingston Enterprises. Your father was very proud of what you built together, Harold said as we concluded our meeting. He told me several times that transferring the business to you was the best decision he'd ever made. He was a good teacher and a better partner, I replied. I'm going to miss working with him. What are your plans for Kingston Enterprises? I'm planning to take the company public within 2 years, I said. The technology division has grown to the point where it makes sense to access public capital markets for the next phase of expansion. And your stepmother? I considered the question carefully. I hope she finds happiness. Marriage to my father gave her access to a lifestyle she enjoyed, but it was never going to last forever. Now she has the opportunity to build something of her own. 6 months later, I received a wedding invitation from Veronica. She had married a real estate developer from Phoenix. Apparently, she had decided that her 50s were too young for retirement from the marriage market. The invitation was expensive and elegant, suggesting that she had successfully identified another wealthy partner. I sent a wedding gift and a note wishing her well. Despite everything, I harbored no ill will toward her. She had made my father happy for a few years, and that counted for something. Kingston Enterprises went public 8 months after my father's death, with an initial valuation of $340 million. My controlling stake made me one of the youngest female CEOs of a publicly traded company, which generated another round of media attention and speaking opportunities. But the real satisfaction wasn't the money or the recognition. It was the knowledge that I had honored my father's legacy while building something that reflected my own vision and values. The house where I grew up, where Veronica had briefly reigned as queen, became the headquarters for the Kingston Foundation, a charitable organization focused on technology education for underserved youth. The formal dining room where she had entertained clients became a computer lab where kids learn programming and robotics. Sometimes the most important inheritance isn't money or property. It's the confidence that comes from building something meaningful with people who believe in your potential. My father gave me that confidence along with the business acumen to turn potential into reality. And sometimes the most satisfying victory isn't defeating your enemies. It's proving that your success was never dependent on their approval in the first place.